Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at two concepts that are really key to understanding the world of AI.
Yeah, they can seem kind of technical at
They
first,
do.
but I think once we break them down a little bit,
Yeah,
you'll really have a much deeper understanding of how all of these AI models work.
totally. And these are context window and thinking time.
Exactly. It's like unlocking the
Yeah.
secrets of AI.
Behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with context window.
Okay.
So think of it like this.
Okay.
You're trying to write a novel,
Okay.
but you can only remember the last paragraph that you wrote.
Gotcha.
So every new sentence that you add pushes the previous sentence out of your mind.
Yeah.
That's essentially what AI, with a limited context window,
Uh-huh.
is dealing with.
Right.
You can only hold a certain amount of information
Yeah.
in its mind at any given time.
Absolutely. And just like with our novelist,
Rough.
with a bad memory,
Yeah?
that can make it really difficult to create something coherent
Wow.
and meaningful.
Right.
So if the context window is too small, it might forget crucial details from earlier in a conversation
Yeah.
or miss important connections in a large chunk of text.
Okay, so how does this actually play out in real-world applications?
Well, let's look at chatbots as an example.
Okay,
Those times when you're interacting with a chatbot
I do.
and it seems to just completely forget
Yeah?
what you just said a few messages ago?
Yes.
Like you tell it you need a phone case
Right.
for your new iPhone,
Uh-huh.
and then 2 messages later it's like, oh,
Yeah,
here's some Android accessories.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's a classic sign of a limited context window.
So a larger context window,
Totally.
be able to maintain that entire conversation
Yeah,
and say, okay,
right.
this person has an iPhone.
Yeah,
I know what they're talking about.
absolutely. And it would remember you mentioned the iPhone
Okay.
and tailor its responses accordingly. Gotcha.
Instead of those random Android suggestions,
Yeah.
it might say, hey, since you've got the new iPhone,
Yeah.
you want some AirPods to go with it.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's not even just about remembering. It's about connecting the dots and understanding the context of what's going on
Absolutely.
in this conversation or in this piece of text.
Exactly. And this becomes even more important when we're talking about AI models
Oh, okay.
that need to analyze or summarize large amounts of information.
Uh-huh.
So think about legal documents,
Yeah.
research papers, or even entire books.
Yeah.
If the AI can only process small chunks of text at a time,
Yeah.
it's going to miss
Right.
a lot of the nuances and connections that make up the bigger picture.
Like trying to understand the plot of a movie by just seeing a couple scenes.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
You might get the gist,
Uh-huh.
but you're going to miss a lot.
You're going to miss character development.
Totally.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
All the important stuff.
And that's why models like GPT-4,
Yes.
with this 128,000 token
Yeah.
context window,
Yeah.
are such a game changer.
Absolutely.
They can process these huge amounts of text
Yeah.
and allow them to grasp the context and meaning more effectively.
Right.
So 128,000 tokens.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Can you give me a sense of how much information that actually is?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
The entire text of Shakespeare's Hamlet
Okay.
is roughly 30,000 words.
Wow.
GPT-4's context window could handle about 4 times that amount.
That's wild.
So that means it could potentially analyze all of Hamlet
Jeez.
and still have room to spare.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle on context window, I think.
I think so too.
Now let's move on to thinking time.
Okay.
This one seems a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's more to it than meets the eye.
You're right, there is.
Okay.
So on the surface, thinking time is simply how long it takes an AI to process information and generate a response.
Right.
But the real intrigue
Yeah.
lies in understanding the trade-offs involved
Uh-huh.
between speed and quality.
What do you mean by trade-offs?
Well, imagine you're asking an AI
Right.
to solve a simple math problem,
Uh-huh.
like 2 plus 2.
Okay.
You probably want that answer right away,
I do.
without any delay.
Yes, 2 plus 2. I'm not waiting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But now imagine you're asking that AI to write a poem
Okay.
or compose a piece of music
Right.
or even come up with a new scientific theory.
Yeah, those all take a lot more
More.
and creativity.
Right.
So in those situations,
Yeah.
we might be willing to sacrifice a little bit of speed
Mhm.
for a more creative
Yeah.
or insightful output.
Right. Like fast food versus a gourmet meal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where thinking time comes into play.
Okay.
AI developers are constantly trying to find...
That sweet spot
Right.
between speed and quality,
Okay.
depending on what the application is and what the desired outcome is.
So it's not just about making the AI as fast as possible.
Right.
It's about understanding how much time it needs to do its best work.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because there are so many factors that can influence an AI's thinking time.
Yeah, like what?
The complexity of the task,
Right.
the size of the data set, the architecture of the model itself,
Okay.
the available computing power,
Wow.
all these things.
It's a complex puzzle
You could say that.
where all the pieces need to fit together
Yeah.
to create the best result.
Yeah, and just as there are techniques to optimize an AI's context window,
Right.
there are strategies to manage and enhance its thinking time.
Okay.
For example, a technique called chain of thought prompting
Okay.
can help AI models solve complex problems
Uh-huh.
more accurately by guiding them to think step by step, like they're explaining their reasoning out loud.
Okay.
It's really cool.
That is fascinating. I want to hear more about that.
Let's take a quick look at how some of the leading AI providers are tackling these challenges of context window and thinking time.
Okay, great. I'm curious to see how they're doing that.
They're definitely at the forefront of innovation in this area,
Yeah.
each with their own unique approaches and strategies.
Okay, cool.
Right. It's amazing to think about how much information an AI can hold or how long it takes to process that information can have such a huge impact on its capabilities.
It really is like AI, while being inspired by the human brain,
Yeah.
operates under very different principles.
Yeah.
And as we continue to develop more sophisticated AI models, understanding those nuances becomes even more important.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here? What else can we learn about how these affect the real-world applications of AI?
Well, one of the most exciting things is how developers and users are finding ways to optimize both context window and thinking time
Okay.
for very specific tasks.
Okay, give me some examples.
So let's say you're working with a massive data set, like a collection of historical documents or a huge library of scientific papers.
Okay.
And you're trying to train an AI to extract key insights or summarize the information.
That sounds like a pretty daunting task,
It can be.
especially if the context window is too small to handle all of that.
Exactly. And that's where choosing the right model for the job becomes really important.
Okay.
So for example, if you're dealing with extremely lengthy inputs,
You're right.
opting for a model with a larger context window like Google's Gemini makes sense.
Right. It's all about matching the tool to the task.
Exactly. You wouldn't use a tiny spoon to serve soup.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't use a model with a limited context window to make sense of an entire library worth of information.
Yeah, it would just be completely overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So what if you're stuck with a model with a smaller context window?
Yeah,
Are there any workarounds?
absolutely. One technique is to break down that input into smaller chunks.
Okay.
So think of it like reading a book chapter by chapter
Right.
instead of absorbing the entire thing all at once.
Okay, so you're essentially pre-processing the information for the AI to make it easier to digest.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that risk
Yeah.
losing the connections and context between those smaller chunks?
It's a valid concern, but there are ways to mitigate that risk.
Okay.
For example, you can use overlapping chunks,
Okay.
where the end of one chunk overlaps with the beginning of the next one.
Right.
And that helps to preserve some of the context and flow of the information.
Interesting. So it's like you're creating a chain of interconnected pieces.
Exactly. And there are even more sophisticated techniques like using embeddings,
Okay.
which essentially create a numerical representation of the meaning and relationships within the text.
Okay.
And these embeddings can help the AI understand the overall context even when working with smaller chunks of data.
Wow. Okay, so that's getting a little bit technical for me.
Uh-huh.
But it sounds like there's a whole world of strategies and tools to optimize this context window,
Absolutely.
depending on the needs of the task at hand.
Yeah, and the same goes for thinking time.
Okay.
There are techniques to manage and enhance the AI's thinking process.
Okay.
Remember that chain of thought prompting we mentioned?
Yes, where you're guiding the AI to think step by step.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that technique is a great example of how we can strategically extend an AI's thinking time
Okay.
to improve the quality of its output
Okay.
by encouraging the model to break down complex problems into smaller steps.
Yeah.
We're essentially giving it that space and time it needs
Yeah.
to reason more effectively.
It's like you're giving the AI a whiteboard and saying, show me your work.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And the results can be really quite remarkable.
Okay.
Studies have shown that this can significantly improve an AI's performance
Yeah.
on tasks that require logical reasoning and problem solving,
Wow.
and even creative writing.
Okay, but aren't there situations where speed is more important
Yeah.
than having the AI meticulously explain every step?
Of course, think about real-time applications,
Okay.
like chatbots or voice assistants.
Yeah, no one wants to wait 5 minutes
Yeah,
for
exactly.
their voice assistant to tell them the weather.
Right. You want those things to happen quickly,
It's
even if the answers are a little less detailed.
right. So how do we balance that need for speed
Right.
with the desire for accuracy and depth?
That's where things get really interesting because it's all about finding the right balance
Yeah.
for the task at hand.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
Sometimes we might need to sacrifice a bit of speed to get the quality we need.
Okay.
Other times we might prioritize speed over complexity.
Right. It's like choosing between taking the scenic route or the expressway.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to get there.
Sometimes you just gotta go.
And sometimes you want to enjoy the journey.
Absolutely.
So thankfully, we have tools and techniques that allow us to make those choices.
Yes, and platforms like OpenAI and Hugging Face give users a lot of control over how the AI generates responses.
Perfect.
And they can adjust parameters like temperature and top.
Okay. I'm going to need you to explain those a little bit more.
Yeah, so imagine you have a dial that controls the AI's creativity.
Okay.
That's essentially what temperature does.
Okay.
So a lower temperature setting
Yeah.
makes the AI's responses more predictable and focused.
Okay.
So it sticks closely to the most likely or expected paths.
So if you're looking for a factual answer or a straightforward summary,
Yeah.
you'd want to keep that low.
Keep it low, but if you're looking for something more imaginative,
Okay.
you might turn up the temperature a bit.
Gotcha.
Give the AI a little bit of freedom.
Okay, so it's like choosing between a safe bet and a wild card.
Exactly.
What about top?
Top or nucleus sampling is a way to control how many possibilities the AI considers
Okay.
at each step of its thought process.
Gotcha.
Think of it like a filter that narrows down the options.
Okay.
So a lower top value means the AI will focus on the most likely paths,
Right.
leading to faster responses,
Right.
but potentially less nuanced outputs.
So it's like choosing between a narrow, well-trodden path and a wide, adventurous trail.
Exactly. And just like any journey,
Yeah.
the choice of path depends on what the desired outcome is and the constraints of the situation.
Totally.
So if speed is paramount,
Yeah.
we might opt for a more direct route.
Yeah. If you got to get there, you got to get there.
Right. But if we have the luxury of time
Mhm.
and we're looking for a more comprehensive exploration, we might choose a path that allows for more detours and discoveries.
This is all making a lot of sense. It's like we're learning to speak the language of AI
It is.
and understanding how to communicate to these models.
Exactly. And as we conclude this episode,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a question.
Okay.
As AI models become capable of processing more and more information, will the speed of thinking even matter?
Ooh, that's a great question. Will we reach a point where the size of its knowledge base
Yeah.
makes processing speed almost a non-issue?
It's definitely a possibility, and that's what makes all of this so fascinating.
It really is.
The answers are constantly changing as AI continues to evolve.
It's an exciting time to be alive,
It really is.
and we'll be here to guide you through it all.
One deep dive at a time.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow